All right, all right, all right, all right, all right. It is Sunday night. Do you know where your pogs are? Of course you do. We are back in the building for another edition of the Two Pogs podcast. We are a little later than we normally come on due to some logistical issues, if you will. But I digress. We are here and we are still ready to rock. We have an exciting discussion for you guys tonight. And I have to specify the word discussion because we got a comment this week saying that you guys are horrible. You guys are a horrible debate show. To which I had to remind him, thanks, but we are not a debate show. We are a discussion show. So if you're here looking for us to do name calling and cat scratching and all that other stuff, I'm sorry, man. This isn't a podcast for you. We're just two guys who have a little bit of a different point of view, who try to come together for sensible solutions to today's most pressing problems. And with that, Chappie, how you doing, man?
Well, I want to know where our intro went.
I did not play it this week, nor
okay.
is the background on, which is weird. I don't know what's going on. Let me see if we can work to try to fix
our production. You I think you should fire the producer right off the bat.
Yeah, he is. I'm telling you, man. I'm telling you, with the missus downrange and me having to do daddy daycare, it is interesting dealing with these too many personalities. And I'm just sucking.
You know, that should kick off our discussion, because you are a late 40-something.
Yes.
Taking care of two kids.
Yes.
And you're struggling. It's just you. You don't have the support system that you would like.
Yes.
And meanwhile, we have somebody in the White House who I don't think could do what you do day in and day out, just as a normal dad.
Well, yeah, he's 87, so I would imagine, to be fair, I don't think I could be dealing with kids at 80 something. I am barely hanging on by a thread at 40, so I can only imagine, man. Like I said, it's all right though. The queen of the castle will be returning hopefully in a couple of weeks. My job as a father is to keep them alive. If I can do that,
absolutely,
I've met my quota. The biggest things we got at school getting ready to come up, getting everything prepped for school, doing all the stuff that I took for granted that the missus kind of takes care of, and like getting the school prep and stuff. So she's trying to coach me through it via Zoom conversations and telephone, and it just is not working.
I get it. I've got four, so yeah.
That's a weird segue, man, because I am such a fan of traditional marriage and marrying someone who complements your weaknesses.
Absolutely.
Because, man, I couldn't imagine. I could not imagine, man, just trying to go at it on my own. But anyway, we got a packed show. That is not what we came here to talk to you guys about. We came to talk about quite a bit of stuff. We got let's see. We got the Democrats coming from the president's head. Heard this little thing called Project 2025, which has everybody up in an uproar. We got extremists marching in Tennessee. Interesting how that came about all of a sudden. And yeah, man, what else? Oh, we got the SCOTUS. There are rumblings talking about impeaching the SCOTUSes. Oh my God, what a show. All right, so with that being said, we tried out the new format last week. We posted all the resources in our Facebook groups and on our Facebook page, and I tried to get them on Instagram and Twitter and all of the socials, so you guys can kind of follow along with us and get a heads up beforehand. In addition to that, I have the link for the Project 2025, what people are calling the manifesto, the conservative manifesto. So, Chappie, where you want to start?
Dealer's choice, man. I mean, they're all fun, and I think I do like the idea that we're a debate show, because I thought it was funny. I somebody I don't know, but on Substack that has followed me, I said, hey, this is what we're doing. If you want to get on and do it, he's clearly a conservative. I said, I'm conservative. He's former Army. I'm active duty. I'm a conservative. and he's a pretty much a moderate, and I'm trying to talk him onto my side of the fence. So if that's a debate show, I think that I'd like to think that, yeah, not only do we just have discussions, but we also try to point out, and I'm sure other people do this, we're probably not super special,
Right.
But how many other people are doing shows where, like, we are a super, 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 super poor man's Joe Rogan. We just sit down and we just have those conversations. I watch, and we won't do it because you can't review, the real Joe Rogan, because the podcast I'd like to talk about it. If you have a chance, you want to go watch it, I highly recommend going in and watching the one with Terrence Howard and Eric Weinstein. 4 hours. I watched it yesterday. But man, what a great discussion. I like to think I'm fairly smart, fairly educated. Nope. I listen to those two, and Terrence Howard is self-taught. I'm self-taught in a lot of ways. I have, 2 master's degrees, but not in engineering or electrical whatever. And Terrence Howard's right there with him. This dude, Eric Weinstein, who's gone to Harvard, brilliant. He's bringing stuff, and Terrence Howard's like, "Oh, you mean this? You're talking about this?" And the guy's like, "Yeah, okay, you know what that is? This weird algebra thing." I was like, "Cool." So we are talking about do stuff and bringing our opinions to it. But hey, it's fun. So what do we got out of the gate?
Let's go. Let's dig into President.
Nova Scotia. We got somebody in Canada. He's the only one that could be further east than I am at this point.
Let's get it. We are international. What up, Gary? Appreciate the shout out, brother. Thanks for chiming in today. Here we go. Let's talk about it. Where's the president? There's the president.
Day, and it was a big.
Where is the president?
Texas, as this morning, Texas Representative Lloyd Doggett called on Biden to step aside as the Democratic nominee for president. Doggett is the first Democrat to publicly call for Biden to step down. And we want to continue to break this down and really talk about this big moment. So let's bring in our next guest here of this hour. We are now joined by Texas Tribune politics reporter Matthew Choi. Thanks so much for being here on this really big day as we are seeing and the continued fallout from that debate performance. Matthew, what can you tell us here about the representative today?
First of all, thanks so much for having me. I mean, Congressman Doggett kind of broke the dam by having this announcement today, saying that he was calling on President Biden to withdraw. I spoke with him on the phone. He said the reason why he issued this statement is because he was really distressed by the president's performance during the debate, and he felt that this was too important of an election to have a candidate who he does not have 100% confidence in. That said, this congressman is somebody who has supported the president in the past. He is not running in a particularly competitive district. So he insists that this really is something coming from his own heart.
And I want you to talk a little bit more about that, because what you said off the top there, I think a lot of.
All right. So Congressman Leggett out of Texas was kind of the first one to publicly come out and say, hey, we should probably look at somebody else for president. And then since that was earlier last week, and I remember us talking at the end of our show last week, we had a conversation about, does President Biden survive the week? And one of the keys we said, it depends on how much, one, how much public pushback you get from the party, and then 2, how much does he have that insulated support come out, right? So what we initially saw right after the debate, we saw former President Obama come together. We saw the congressman from South Carolina come together, his ally, and a couple of
Conyers.
No, it wasn't Conyers. What's it's the older black gentleman. His name escapes me right now.
Oh, I thought well, you remember last week you said that it was going to be Conyers and Obama, and
Conyers hasn't said anything yet. See, now I got to go to Google. Either way, go ahead and do your thoughts, and then I'll get his name up.
Well, I said that if Biden is in this week, he's in for the run, and I do think he is. I think he's going to stay there. And do you have anything loaded for the 25th Amendment?
I don't.
Okay, so let's go to that right now. So the 25th Amendment is basically the cabinet can get together and institute the 25th Amendment. If you assert, I believe it's 2/3 of the cabinet. Now, I could be wrong, but this is my understanding. And my understanding of it is from 2019, 2020, when all the Democrats were yelling and screaming that President Trump should be removed via the 25th Amendment. So if I'm wrong factually on some of this stuff, I apologize. My understanding is if 2/3 of the cabinet say the president is unfit, they can remove him constitutionally. And like I just said, we heard for years about how the cabinet should step in and remove President Trump, mainly from the left, because they didn't like his policies. They didn't like what he was saying, didn't like what he was doing. So now you have a president who is, slightly diminished at best and closer to full-blown Alzheimer's than healthy at worst, who has severe issues putting together a sentence, staying coherent. I watched the George Stephanopoulos interview, and the first thing I thought was, well, it's interesting, Orange Man bad, because whoever did President Biden's makeup sure did the orange job. Maybe they brought in Trump's makeup artist. But if you're going to say that President Trump 4 or 5 years ago should be removed due to the 25th Amendment, and then you say, well, he's not fit enough to continue running as a candidate. Now, remember, they're not coming out and just saying that he can't win. They're saying after the debate, it's clear he's diminished and he can't win. Okay. Well, it would be one thing if they just came out and said, well, he can't win. He doesn't have the path. He's a Dukakis 2.0, which is probably a bad analogy because, Dukakis was not a sitting president. He's a George H.W. Bush 2.0. He just doesn't have a path against his opponent, whatever it is. But they're not saying implementing the 25th Amendment, which I find extremely curious, because if he is that diminished and he's not mentally able to continue, why aren't they doing that? Which tells me, again, just like the impeachments against President Trump were, it's political. It has nothing to do with performance. It has nothing to do with what's actually going on. It's about political, and it's about staying in power, because if this Texas, was he a senator? He wasn't a senator. He was a representative, right? The first one to say. Okay. If he was truly concerned about what's going on, that should be the call, not run. The call should be, hey, we all saw the debate. President Biden is clearly struggling. We even saw the interview last night, and that didn't allay any of my fears. Maybe the cabinet, who's been around him the most, needs to look at the 25th Amendment. And that would also force the cabinet to come out and say, oh, well, this is what we've seen or we haven't seen. Because the media, I think it's the funniest thing, and not ha-ha funny. Over the last 3 years, including the last election, the American people were told President Biden is just fine. He's mentally stable. Anybody who says otherwise is just attacking him. It has no grounds. Over the last 6 months, we've seen and longer, but we've seen the White House press secretary who has said, oh, this is all a matter of weeks before the debate. Oh, it's deep fakes. He's as sharp as a tack. We have people coming in who work with him all the time, and he's just right. There's nothing wrong with him. And it went from that to, oh, well, he really is diminished. He should probably not run. And to me, the gaslight has been blown out. And now, if you trusted the American media before the debate, there's no reason to believe them anymore. You should not trust. This is something I've said for now years. The media in this country, the traditional media, is not your friend. They're not there to inform you. They are there to manipulate you and to shape your opinions. not provide information.
Yep. So, hey, thanks. Shout out to Peace Baby for giving me the name. It was Jim Clyburn. That's the guy.
Clyburn.
Yeah, Clyburn is the guy that saved his initial when he was initially on the ballot, and he was struggling in South Carolina. So the guys I had who really had to come out and step up for Biden would be obviously the former president Obama, Jim Clyburn, and Hakeem Jeffries, which is telling because this week he met with prominent leaders of Congress, right? And you've had a couple that I'm scrolling some names across the bottom of the ticker. These are the representatives who have came out and openly spoken about removing Biden from the top of the ticket or removing Biden from the ticket together. So I think we're up to about 10 representatives and congressmen altogether. But Hakeem Jeffries.
How funny is, real quick, how funny is Nadler to be on that list?
I was surprised, man. And I'll tell you why. A lot of these guys are pretty long in the tooth themselves, right? So, which is fine. You know, I get it. But you can't be in the same graduate or the same high school class, of Joe Biden and then get on TV and say Joe Biden is too old to run. Because if Joe Biden is too old to run and you're only a couple of years behind him, what does that say about you as a representative? Are you also too old to run? Which is fine. Hold on, we got a comment. And Gary, so Gary says, I don't see Biden living until November health-wise. We brought that up 2 episodes ago, and that was a great point. And I don't know, man. His deterioration is bad, but I think he's fine. I don't see him making the entire 4 years, but I think he can. I think he'll make it through the election.
Well, I think you could see, whether President Biden wins or loses re-election, it's going to be neck and neck who dies first between him and Clinton. Because if you've seen Clinton recently, that dude has aged 50 years since his media shell came down.
To be fair, Trump isn't exactly a spring chicken either. And
no,
I don't think he's living the healthiest life. If I was a betting man, I'd take the over on or the under on whether either one of these guys make it through the 4-year term, man.
Somebody wrote a really good. You know what? It might have been our friend Greg Easterbrook. He might have written on Substack about this. I'm pretty sure he did, because he was saying that normally, and we've talked about this, normally the vice president pick doesn't matter. And the way we've talked about it is it doesn't normally move the needle very much. In fact, you have times where, like McCain, it didn't matter who McCain picked. He wasn't winning against President Obama. And it didn't matter who Obama had as his VP. He was going to win. In 2012, Ryan didn't even carry Wisconsin for Romney. Okay, so right. So, and then does anybody think Mike Pence moved the needle for Trump? And I can't even tell you who Hillary Clinton's VP was in 2016. The only reason that President Biden picked Kamala Harris is pretty obvious, and we don't have to spell it out. We've talked about it. But this time, what you just said is extremely important. I think it's really, really a big deal this time. Because while the needle might not get moved by who the VP pick is, I think you and I both believe, and probably even more than a coin toss for Biden, but let's say it's at least 50-50, whichever president is elected, 50-50 that they make it for the full 4 years. That means you are not, in this election, you are not voting only for the president. You are potentially voting for the next president, which does make it really, really interesting to see who the VPs are going to be. Now, if Biden continues to run, we already know who's his. Trump has said he knows who it is, but he's not going to announce it. I think it's because he's doing the Napoleon thing. Yeah. If your enemies continue to make mistakes, you don't interrupt them. You let them keep hurting themselves.
Yeah.
So Trump's just sitting back going, hey, Dems, you just keep fighting.
Yeah, I think it's strategic for him not to announce a VP pick because he doesn't need any extra scrutiny right now, and the Blues are doing the job for him.
Yep.
So Gary brings up the comment about being concerned about the nuclear codes in the hand of Weekend at Bernie's, which is Biden, and yeah, but to be fair, I would be extremely concerned with either one of those knuckleheads having nuclear codes. I don't.
Okay, so hold on. Let's look at that for a second, though. Right? No matter who the president is, the president cannot launch a nuclear attack by him or herself.
Right. Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So if you're saying it's President Biden or it's President Trump, and I don't trust either of them, there is that safety catch of the second person who can step in. And there's a right way and a wrong way to do that. And we saw in 2019-20, we saw the wrong way to do that. And that was the Mark Esper and General Milley way of doing it, which is I'm going to go behind the president's back and not allow him to do anything. Now, if Trump had stepped forward and said, you know what, on my way out, I'm going to launch a nuclear weapon against Iran because of whatever. And then Milley said, nope, I don't agree. Or whoever the second person is. Do you know who the second person is?
I don't.
It's got to be somebody fairly independent. It wouldn't surprise me if it was the
hold tight.
The chief of
that is a great
look
to who that'll put to where we're going. So let's go.
So look that up.
All right.
So
Gary.
So while you're looking that up,
Gary says it's the sec def. That's who Milley was.
Okay. Well, no, it wasn't Milley. It was Esper.
Esper,
no? Right? Yeah.
Well, anyway, we'll look it up. We'll play the video. We'll look it up.
Who was the secretary? No, it was Esper, right? Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was Esper.
Okay.
So at that point, Esper could say to President Trump, I'm sorry, Mr. President, I don't agree with this. It's not right for us to preemptively attack whoever it is. And that's where the failsafe is. Now, I think the other side of it is, I made this analogy between Trump and Biden. If you had to travel from, let's say, Columbia, where you are, KJ, down to Atlanta, which is a good 3.5, 4 hour drive, right? Long stretches, you have to go through Augusta and all that. And you had to get one of them up and say, all right, 10 o'clock at night, there's an emergency. We got to drive. You're driving. I broke my leg. Something, and I can't drive. You have to drive me. Who do you pick? Who do you trust between Joe Biden and Donald Trump to say, here's the keys. My life depends on you getting me to Atlanta, 4 hour drive. I'm handing you the keys.
Uber. I wouldn't pick either one. But I digress.
Wait, not an option. Not an option. Who do you pick?
Neither one. Neither one and neither one.
So
and I am pass on neither one of those.
So without answering though, and that's fine, that's kind of the point, right? Is that we put ourselves in such a horrible position that you can't trust either of them to give you a ride.
Absolutely.
And just as the obvious joke, nobody trusts a Kennedy to give you a ride late at night in their car either.
Eloy, let's rock. All right, we are moving on. This is gonna get interesting really quick.
Where you can see a picture of the list.
All right. So
which will remain bloodless.
We're not going to play all of it, but we are going to.
You know what? This comment is valid, and he's not the only one saying stuff like this. How do we know that Donald Trump is a part of Project 2025? He has his own agenda. How do we know that he's even aware of this? And here's the deal. Donald Trump claims he isn't. He posted, I know nothing about Project 2025. I have no idea who is behind it. He goes on to say he disagrees with it, wishes them luck, etc. And you got to take the man at his word, unless There is proof out there that all or some of this is a lie.
Your organization is named the Heritage Foundation because you understand that our glorious heritage is the foundation of everything we hope to achieve, which is why we need the help of the Heritage Foundation and everyone here tonight to get our tax cuts through the House, through the Senate.
I have no idea who is behind it, he said. And then I played a clip of him talking about the Heritage Foundation to the Heritage Foundation in front of a backdrop that says the Heritage Foundation on it. I would say it is a 100% impossibility that he doesn't know who Kevin Roberts, the president of the Heritage Foundation, is. Oh, look, there's Donald Trump meeting Kevin Roberts on stage and shaking his hand. But maybe that's the only connection. Or, maybe not. Do you remember this guy? John McKenzie? You may have seen him recently when he got some flack because he likes to make shit post videos on TikTok. He made one where he claims he hands out counterfeit bills to homeless people in the hopes that they'll get arrested. And he used to be a personal assistant to Donald Trump during his first term. Well, as you could see, in May of last year, the Heritage Foundation was proud to announce that John McKenzie joined them as part of the Project 2025 team, working with them. But hey, maybe him and Trump, they aren't so close anymore. Well, according to this article by Rolling Stone from May of this year, a full year after he was added to Project 2025, Trump could make this viral TikToker one of the most powerful people in government. The former president loves him. He's one of the architects at Project 2025, and he's almost certainly going to be part of Trump's administration. He's not part of his administration yet, so I don't count that. Okay, cool. How about her? You think Donald Trump knows her? As in her, Caroline Leavitt, Trump campaign national press secretary. Literally, the press secretary for his current presidential campaign. And oh look, here she is starring in a Project 2025 Presidential Administration Academy recruitment video for the Heritage Foundation. Donald Trump looking you in the face, saying he doesn't know anything about Project 2020.
All right, so I'll start by saying that was definitely a left-leaning. He is a left-leaning blogger or vlogger, I guess, and he has a tendency to go after conservative politicians and kind of point out the hypocrisy and stuff.
His logic is completely flawed.
Yeah. So, but we can definitely get into it. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. So KJ, you hear that the 369th Signal Battalion has a project that they're going to be running, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you say to me, "Hey, Chaplain, you're their chaplain. You know about this project, right?" And I say, "I don't know what you're talking. What project are you talking about?" "Oh, but wait a minute. You're part of 369. You know the XO there. You know the S3 there. You know the supply guy there. You know these people. You've worked with these people." And I'm going, and like, I don't really know that Alpha Company is doing some July 4th fireworks show.
That's skewed. So it wouldn't be you particularly because you're, as a chaplain, you're adjacent. It will be like the commander saying, "Hey, I don't know what's going on in Bravo Battery. I'm just the commander." So if we're gonna do that,
hold on.
But if we're gonna do that, we gotta do the alignment right. Trump isn't adjacent to this thing. Trump is the guy. So
right. But here's my point though. Okay, but here's my point though, is Trump didn't say, "I don't know what the Heritage Foundation is." He didn't say, "Well, I don't know the president of the Heritage Foundation." Of course I do. I don't know the press secretary.
He did say that. He did say
he
that.
knows. Well, oh, he said he didn't know who the president of the Heritage
Foundation. The first part he didn't, he didn't talk about.
Okay.
Yeah, his first part he didn't talk about. He didn't. So to preface everything, Trump says, "Hey, that's Project 2025. I don't get into the weeds. I don't have nothing to do with that." right?
Sure.
Then he came back and said, oh, well, what about the Heritage Foundation? You've had some affiliations with those guys. And then he was like, what's that? I don't know anything about that. So that's why and you get it.
I'm curious. I would be, as with anything, I'd be curious what the context is, because you could very easily conflate those two things, meaning, hey, what's this Project 25? And he goes, I don't know anything about it. It's Heritage Foundation. And you and your buddy, this guy is running the Heritage Foundation. And he goes, I don't know what you're talking about. He might be talking still about Project 25. I'm not trying to say he doesn't know. I'm not saying he's not lying. What I'm saying is this blogger, the case that the blogger is making is flawed. And so I look at Project 2025, and I've gone through, I haven't gone into it, but I've gone through the basic stuff. I just pulled up the basic wish list. Okay, so real quick, let me go through just this real short list, right? And I'm going to say, as a conservative, okay, whether I'm like, got it, whether I agree with it or not, I can get behind it. I can fully agree, can't agree, or I'm in the middle. National abortion ban. Well, I'm sure that's a wish list. It's not happening. That's got to be a constitutional amendment. It's not happening. Restricted IVF access. I can't get behind that one. I don't really understand that one. And I don't think that one would go anywhere, honestly. Family separation. Is that separating kids at the border when they come across because their parents have come across illegally, or you're going to send people who cross the border illegally and you're going to separate the families because the child was born here and the kids need to go back? I think, if I remember right, that's the kids in cages argument, which started under Obama. And I agree with the argument of, yeah, hey, you know what? If my wife and I go rob a bank, they're not going to let us stay home just because we have kids at home.
That did not start with Obama. So the kid separation has been in place since the early 20th century.
So it's been a while then.
So what they would do is the parents would be illegal, but they would come across the border and give birth to the kid, and by birthright citizenship, they will be able to stay.
Anchor babies.
And that's what this project, ironically enough, Trump was an anchor baby, which is really fascinating, but I digress. Carry on.
Okay. So, and again, you're talking about things, if you're going to if the idea is to get rid of anchor babies, as it were, you have to change the 14th Amendment. Okay. So again, you're talking about changing an amendment. I don't see it happening. I kind of understand why. I actually have some strong thoughts about illegal immigration. I think if your first act in trying to get into this country is to do something illegal, you don't deserve to be here. I mean, I'm kind of a law and order guy, so I'm fine with that. Muslim ban. I think that one's just absolutely ridiculous because it was a misnomer when the Muslim ban popped up 5 years ago, and he was saying, look, I don't think people that are from these certain countries that have higher levels of terrorism and higher levels of terrorism support should be allowed to come to the U.S. without higher vetting. Okay, cool. I'm down with that. Tax cuts for the ultra wealthy. I think we saw that. I'd like to see what the actual plan is. I mean, I'm not a real fan of big tax cuts. I'm a bigger fan of closing the loopholes and making, and you know that I'm a flat tax guy. I think we should just go with the flat tax. Replace civil servants with MAGA loyalists. You mean like every other president has done since it was right after, whoever was right after Adams? Because when Adams was doing it, the guy after Adams came in and he did it, and they said, hey, you're not supposed to do that. It's basically nepotism. He said, no, it's just presidential favors. So that's been going on since like the third president of the nation. Okay. So replace civil servants. Personally, there are some civil servants that need to go, quite honestly. I think we should cut the civil servants in this country by 70%. I think the military should cut civil servants by about 90%. Because if you have soldiers that can do those jobs, soldiers should be doing those jobs. Make them earn their keep. Guns in the classroom. I'm all for guns in the classroom. If a teacher wants to volunteer and get licensed, I'm planning on becoming a high school teacher. if my school will allow me to carry because I know what I'm doing, let me carry, and I will if I can. Order prosecution of political opponents. The irony of that one, I hope, is not lost on anybody, because if Trump is guilty by association on the federal whatever the Liberty Group, well, then the number 3 Department of Department of Justice just prosecuted Trump and pardoned January 6th insurrectionists. I agree with that one for the most part too. I think January 6th was so politicized that, and overcharged, and you and I have talked about this, overcharged, and even the Supreme Court came out and said, hold on, you're using these statutes against these guys that added years and years and years. Why are we doing that? And it's the same thing you and I have talked about in the Black community, by saying, okay, if somebody's been arrested for drugs, and it's the 3-strike deal, so a guy gets pulled over and he has 1.5 ounces of weed in his car, that's a 3rd drug offense? Are you freaking kidding? He's going to prison for life because he had a couple of joints in his car, because he has 2 prior convictions for whatever. That's ridiculous. So these insurrectionists, quote unquote insurrectionists, I don't think that they were fairly prosecuted. I think there's a lot. So as I go through 2025 as a conservative, there's a lot of things that I go, yeah, I'm okay with those. There's also, I think I have whatever the opposite of rose-colored glasses are. I think I have clear glasses on, and I can say, well, you want that, but you're not getting it. Like, this is some of this stuff, and some of it I don't think is even wish list. I think some of it is almost like, hey, we're going to include this almost to make a point, like the national abortion ban. Or IVF treatments is even better. Didn't the Baptist Congress just pass that they don't think IVF should be done because it's unnatural? I think that's, absolutely silly. Well, okay, so Trump legalizing weed, I hope he does. I think KJ and I have talked about this. The Army would be very well served to legalize weed and go dry, because alcohol plus soldiers plus bad commanders plus family stress equals domestic violence.
What about tradition? Wait, before we get too far off topic.
And beards. Let us have beards too, by the way. You say tradition.
We're gonna pull up an illustration that goes over the 5 points that you just discussed, that you are in agreement.
And I'll let you talk. I've had my turn. Go ahead.
I'll come back after the video, and then I'll give my input after that. So let's rock this one, and then we'll let it
Have
go.
you heard about Project 2025? Hey, it's Dan Zimmerman, and welcome back to Illustrate to Educate. In this video, we'll dive into everything you need to know about Project 2025, including 5 criticisms. Remember, if you disagree with Project 2025 or its criticisms, please don't dislike the video, but instead respectfully comment your thoughts below.
It's not
Project 2025, led by the Heritage Foundation, is a comprehensive initiative designed to prepare for a potential conservative administration starting in January 2025. It is structured around 4 main pillars: policy development, personnel recruitment, training, and strategic planning for the early days of the new administration. Here's a more detailed breakdown of each component. First, let's look at the policy agenda. The Conservative Promise is a detailed policy guide that provides specific recommendations for governing major federal agencies. The guide encompasses conservative solutions to various issues, including economic policies, healthcare, education, and national security. It is intended to serve as a blueprint for the next conservative administration, ensuring that key conservative values and strategies are implemented effectively from the outset. The second pillar is the personnel database.
Makes sense to
Project
plan.
2025 includes a comprehensive personnel database aimed at identifying and vetting potential appointees for various positions within the federal government. This database seeks to ensure that a future conservative administration has a pool of qualified, ideologically aligned individuals ready to fill key roles. The recruitment efforts span across different sectors and backgrounds, targeting experienced
You don't think the Democrats do that?
who can execute the administration's agenda.
I don't like it when they do it either.
The third part is the training.
Well,
through
you
the
got to put
Presidential
people in that agree with
Administration
your
Academy.
policies.
To prepare the identified personnel for their roles,
We've seen what
2025
happens
has
if you don't
established
have
the
people that agree
Presidential
with your
Administration
policies.
Academy.
That's the whole core
This
of the
academy
deep state
offers a range
argument.
of training programs, including workshops, seminars, online courses, and mentorship from former administration officials. The training is designed to equip future administrators with the necessary skills and knowledge to implement conservative policies effectively. Fourth is the 180-day playbook. The 180-day playbook is a strategic document outlining the immediate
I wish I
actions
could draw
to be
like
taken
this.
by the new administration within the first 180
It's
days.
awesome.
This playbook is crafted to enable swift policy reversals and the implementation of conservative priorities, ensuring a smooth and impactful start. It includes specific actions for various departments and agencies, focusing on undoing the policies of the previous administration and setting the stage for long-term conservative governance. Now let's talk about
After
the
you go, I want to
coalition
talk
and
about that one, the
organizational
undoing.
structure.
Sure.
Project 2025 is supported by a coalition of over 100 conservative organizations, including think tanks, advocacy groups, and academic institutions. This broad coalition brings together diverse expertise and resources to support the project's goals.
Which is
Notable participants include former officials
no different
from the
than
Trump administration
what they do on
who
the
contribute
Democratic
their
side.
experience and insights
Absolutely.
to the project. There are specific policy focus areas in Project 2025. Project 2025 proposes significant changes to federal policies on reproductive health. These include removing references to abortion from federal laws and regulations, reversing the approval of abortion pills, and defunding clinics that provide abortion or contraception services. The initiative also aims to reinstate the Comstock Act to ban mail-order abortions and reshape Medicaid to avoid funding reproductive health care services that include abortion. Another focus area is cultural and social
Supreme
issues.
Court already ruled they
The project
couldn't.
emphasizes the restoration of traditional family values and religious principles. This includes
Oh, no,
opposing
not family
policies
values.
perceived as supporting cultural Marxism and promoting a pro-life agenda. It advocates for policies that support the nuclear family, religious liberty, and traditional gender roles. There's also
Good.
the leadership of Project 2025, which is directed by Paul Dans, a former chief of staff at the Office of Personnel Management during the Trump administration, with Spencer Sherteen serving as associate director. Both bring extensive experience from their previous roles in government, contributing to the strategic planning and execution of the project. So what are the criticisms of Project 2025? Project 2025 has sparked significant criticism from various sources. Critics argue that the project embodies a comprehensive plan to centralize executive power, erode democratic norms, and enforce a far-right agenda on American governance and society. Let's take a look at 5 specific criticisms in more detail. First is the centralization of executive power. One major criticism is that Project 2025 seeks to expand presidential control over the federal bureaucracy. The plan includes reviving the Schedule F classification, which would allow the president to replace thousands of civil service employees with political appointees loyal to the administration.
Oh my
Critics
gosh,
argue
that's
this
so
would
stupid.
undermine the nonpartisan nature of the civil service and politicize federal agencies, making them tools of the executive branch rather than independent entities.
I will be
Non-part.
Second is the
Rid of
attack on
this.
democratic institutions.
Yeah. Oh
Critics
yeah.
highlight that Project 2025's
Sure, it's
blueprint
nonpartisan right
includes
now.
proposals to
Sure.
dismantle or weaken key democratic institutions. This includes plans to defund the Department of Justice and dismantle the FBI and other agencies that could act as checks on presidential power. Such moves are
That's
seen
not
as
what they're
efforts
supposed to
undermine
do.
the rule of law and enable the executive branch to operate with little oversight or accountability. Third, the project also faces criticism for its potential use of government power to target political opponents and critics. There are fears that it would enable the executive
That is the
to pursue
dumbest
legal
argument.
action against political adversaries and critical media outlets. drawing parallels to authoritarian regimes where dissent is suppressed through state mechanisms. The fourth
Which has
criticism
happened more
is
the
the
last
social
3
and cultural
years.
agenda. Project 2025's policy agenda includes strong positions on social issues, promoting conservative values that critics argue could roll back rights and protections for various groups. The document outlines plans to restrict LGBTQ+ rights, enforce strict anti-abortion measures, and integrate Christian nationalist principles into government policy. This agenda has raised concerns about the erosion of civil liberties and the imposition of a particular religious and ideological framework on the entire nation. Lastly is the environmental and climate policy rollbacks. The project's stance on environmental regulations is contentious. It proposes significant rollbacks of climate policies, which critics argue would have detrimental effects on efforts to combat climate change and protect the environment. This aspect of the plan is seen as catering to business interests at the expense of long-term ecological sustainability. Did you find this video about Project 2025 to be helpful? Remember not to dislike the video, but...
So...
you're up first.
That was a brief overview. They tried to present an unbiased opinion, but you can kind of tell, and that's with everybody. You can kind of tell which way the flagpole is leaning.
The winds were blowing on that, yeah.
When you present information, which is fine, and I get it. My issues with Project 2025 are the historical precedents that have been set when these types of policies are enacted, right? It's no secret that, people who look like me don't really benefit when there isn't much government oversight, right? Like idealistically, we can come back and we can say in theory, hey, this is great because this is going to even the playing field for everybody, right? Oh, no regulations, no rules. Businesses are free to do what they want to. What we have found in history is that human beings do not do the right thing, and they are tribalist. So when you say things like we're going to extend presidential immunity, right? Immediately, as a black man, I think to immunity. Where have I heard that before? Oh yeah, policemen have immunity. How has that worked out historically for people like me? It does not work out well for people like me when we give people immunity. When we give government officials immunity, it does not work out well. So when you sit back and you say, oh, well, that's a great thing. Yeah, that could be great for you. But for people like me, it does not work well. We do not do well with things like that. When we do government oversight, right? When we say rolling back environmental protections and regulations, where do you think the majority of the plants, the plants are put, right? Pollution and plants put. They're put in impoverished neighborhoods. They're put in neighborhoods that are underserved and underdeveloped. Who lives in those neighborhoods? Who lives in those communities? Not the affluent. They don't get affected, right? So it will, whether the intent, right? We can say that's not the intent, but the action of it is what happens, right? We say, okay, well, which land is easier? Which land is easier? Which populace is easier to manipulate, right? When I go to a municipality, right, and I say, hey, I have this superconductor chip plant that I want to build. It's going to create 5,000 jobs, but it's also going to create, pollution. I'm going to need somewhere to let my radioactive waste run off, or my waste or whatever wear off. You know what the people in the affluent community, the people with access to funding is going to say? We don't want that stuff in our community. Don't put it here, right? So where are they going to go? They're going to go to the people who don't have a vote. They're going to go to the people who don't have a say. They're going to say, well, we can't put it up there. We need this money as a municipality because we're going to get these tax incentives. And look at the bright side. You're going to get these jobs, right? So it'd be different if we hadn't had hundreds of years of case study to the opposite, right? So when you see policies like Project 25, and all it is in all honesty, I went through the entire thing. I spent the entire week, every waking moment, going through the entire 963 pages of the project. And what it is a callback to the post-industrialist era, right? So we're talking about right after World War II, the 1940s to 60s, pre-60s is the sweet spot, right? And that's what they're trying, basically the 30s to the 60s. So when we look back in American history and we say, okay, 1930s to 1960s America, that wasn't a good time. That wasn't a good time. That's my wife calling from overseas. That wasn't a good time for people who look like me, right? So when you sit back, you know, when someone can sit back and say, well, hey, man, the American economy was doing this and America had this and America had that. Yes, America had all of those things and all of those things were great and wonderful. But you know what America also had that was not so great and wonderful? And that is what is most concerning, because without these, it took, let's see, we want to say the 50s is when the civil rights era started. And
right after World War II, yes.
So we're talking, you know, 60, 70, 80 years of progress right now. I will concede that the liberals have taken the pendulum and swung it way too far, right? There's things that I agree with, right? All right, hey, traditional marriage, that makes sense. I personally believe I don't care who you marry. I don't care what you marry, as long as it doesn't affect me, right? I am a equitable person. I'm not an equal person. I don't want equal act. I want it to be equitable, right? Because equal doesn't always mean fair. I want it to be equitable. And if we can't do equitable, take your hands off of it and let the citizen decide whether they can get it or not. And what we found throughout American history is whenever we roll back regulations, whenever we roll back oversight, whenever we say, okay, hey, we're going to let these guys, we're going to let the market dictate the economy. We're going to let, you know, the police dictate, the municipalities govern and dictate the police force. Whenever we hear words like that, or whenever we see policies like that pop up in history, it does not work out well for a segmented portion of our community. And people like me end up getting the short end of the stick. So yeah, these are, I understand the concerns. Like I said, I went through the entire policy. I'm more concerned, and we'll go into that next segment. As a veteran, there's some things that I'm concerned with. But as a citizen, I can sit back and say, okay, I don't have an issue with Trump. I don't have an issue with I think Trump was a fairly decent president, right? But what I am concerned with is the administration officials who don't have a better way to explain this like this, right? Trump has gotten to a point in his life is where, like, hey, I'm going to expose the system, right? We can agree with that, right? He's going to say the system's corrupt. I'm going to do everything I can to take my hands off and expose it, right? Which is great. And he's also a guy that says, okay, if you can get it, I'm going to show you how to get it, which is great. If that was the end all be all, I would have no problem supporting it in a landslide. But what you go back and you look, and you have these Christian nationalists who have a modern American theology of Christianity. Those are the people that scare me, because those are the people who left unchecked caused a bunch of chaos in our community, right? We don't like those Christian nationalists. We are not fans of Christian nationalists. We are not fan of American evangelicals. American evangelicals are the ones that literally hunted people who look like me for hundreds of years for no other reason except for sport and gain. So when people say Christian nationalists and a return to Christian values, that, frankly, that shit is scary for people like me. So there are some serious concerns. And if I were a one-person voter, right, and I look at this and I say, okay, Trump could be a great president. Biden is definitely on the downslide. But will Kamala Harris take me back to a pre-segregation America? Will the people behind Trump, and you can say, okay, well, that's not likely to happen. Sure, we have things, right? We had these things traditionally in America. We had checks and balances, right? You had the SCOTUS. You had the SCOTUSes who provided checks and balances to make sure everything was legal. You had Congress, right? who will come in and they will be moderate. Congress was supposed to be half and half. It's supposed to be moderated, right? And then you had the executive branch, a reasoned overhead branch to say, all right, man, that doesn't make any sense. You guys are bugging. We're going to do it right. But what has happened is we don't have those checks and balances no more. We have a conservative majority in the Supreme Court. We have, I fully expect, because Democrats are garbage, to have a conservative majority in Congress, which is fed by extremists, right? If we had traditional moderates, traditional conservatives, not an issue, right? But we don't have those no more. What we have is we have the moderate for every AOC, you have a Marjorie Taylor Greene and her ilk behind it, right? You have those guys coming in talking all this weird stuff about hanging people and civil war, being proponents of civil war. Those are words that don't do well in general public, right? And then you have a president who, in my opinion, will be too hands off to be able to govern effectively. So that is scary for guys like me, right? Which is great. If Congress was balanced and the SCOTUS was balanced, like I would be fine. Like I've come on the show and said I like the SCOTUS picks, right? I like Amy Coney Barrett. I like Kavanaugh because they're conservatives, but they're traditional conservatives. They're not radical conservatives, right? But when I sit back and I look, and we talked about this before, you're talking about 3 or 4 more potential replacements for SCOTUS. I don't know if he can go 3 for 3 again. I don't know if he can go 4 for 4 without putting some nut jobs in there. And believe it or not, Alito is a nut job. He's an extreme conservative, and we don't do well with those. SCOTUS Thomas, he is a nut job. He's a traditional conservative, a pre-segregationist, which I've never seen in my life. SCOTUS, we talked about that. Let's just say we have some dislikes, right? So those elder statesmen on the SCOTUS bench, I am not fans of, right? Modern centralist conservatives, I'll take all day long. But those extremists, those hard-leaning Christian nationalists, those are scary. And yeah, I think that was a 7-minute rant. So sorry about that.
Okay. I was writing down some of my thoughts on these. Okay. And we're talking about the Heritage Foundation 2025 wish list, as it were, right? Okay. Yeah. So let me say a few things. Now, first, let's just go back. You were worried that if Trump has a Republican Senate and a Republican House, that he'll be able to push his agenda and get things done. Okay. Now, let's remember, in 2016, 2017, Trump did have those, and he didn't go off the rails. Okay. There are checks and balances. I do think checks and balances are very important. I think the Supreme Court has shown, especially during this current session, the majority of the decisions, vast majority, have been 7-2 or higher. So you have a lot of the justices are coming in, and you've seen Kavanaugh go over with, let's say, 1 or 2 of.
I am. Yeah, okay. The new SCOTUS, I think they're doing a remarkable job.
So with that, let me push one thing you just said. I'll touch on what your SCOTUS with Alito and Clarence Thomas. They're nut jobs, okay? That's your words, right? Nut jobs?
Absolutely.
They are no more nut jobs for constitutional literalists, what's actually written in the Constitution, than Sotomayor and Kagan are on the left going, we're going to read this however the hell we want.
Yeah.
Now you can say the difference is, okay, well, if those two cancel out, then you still have, this number against the one. But we've seen enough pollinization there. I'm not really worried about SCOTUS. I think they've done an outstanding job. But we had a long discussion about that a couple of weeks ago.
Yep.
Presidential immunity. Okay, presidential immunity. I understand your thoughts of immunity, but presidential immunity, the way it's being said in the press is ridiculous. Oh, yep. Trump can just go out and kill he can assassinate with drone a political opponent. No, he can't. You know why? You know how I know he can't do it? because Biden hasn't done it already. If Supreme Court came out last week and said it is legal to assassinate a political opponent, you're not telling me someone's going to Joe Biden and saying, Joe, this is easy. All we got to do is send a strike down on Trump and claim that he's a threat to national security and democracy, which they have been screaming and yelling for the last year, by the way, right? He is a threat to democracy, which translated into liberal speak is he's a threat to our power. Okay, let's be real clear about that. So this idea of immunity just means it's carte blanche. Bull.
We've seen. So I'll give you two presidents, right? Where presidential immunity is the scariest thing I've ever seen. And it's recent. Lyndon Baines Johnson and Ronald Reagan. Two presidents who set my community back 2 generations apiece. They ruled unabashedly and they destroyed my community. So when we say presidential immunity, I can see a guy like that becoming president, right? And then
so here's okay, and I understand where you're coming from. I do, and I think when Ronald Reagan left office, if he had been investigated the same way what we just saw with President Biden and the classified document things, I think what you would have seen is a Department of Justice going to say, hey, Reagan okayed to distribute crack in the inner cities, right? So we want to charge him with manslaughter, with 100 counts of manslaughter, 1,000 counts of manslaughter, right? In different, depraved indifferent manslaughter. We want to charge him. I think any prosecutor at that point would have said, dude, he's got Alzheimer's. He's not there. We're not prosecuting him. So Johnson, Lyndon B. Johnson, I think is tough because he's going to sit there and go, oh, I pushed for the civil rights. And he didn't really, but it was Republicans to push for it. But okay, so what I look like is this, and this is why I think it's overblown. Again, this is, we talk about dog whistles on one side. Can we name something for pushing grandma off the cliff whistles? You remember when we had that Romney, where they had the ad, oh, the Republicans are going to push grandma off the cliff, right? Because all you need, if there's no presidential immunity, you just need some local sheriff who lives in the town of one of the 13 soldiers that died in Afghanistan during the withdrawal. As soon as Biden is out of office, to snatch him up and arrest him, go up and serve him, say, hey, we have a warrant down in BFE, Alabama, that we are charging you with depraved indifference in the death of, Staff Sergeant Snuffy. You need to come down, and we are arresting you. That's why it's important. Now, do I agree with full immunity? No, of course not. We already have it established. President Nixon did not have full immunity. He was going to be charged. He would have had major issues. And that's why he resigned. Did they want to go after him after that? Yeah, and that's why Ford decided to pardon him at that point. Nothing. Okay. The one thing you said about the chips thing. Okay, well, where are they going to put it? Are they going to put it, including its pollution? We're going to put it here, and the trade-off is jobs. Okay, well, there you go. That's the trade-off, because Samsung is coming in and they're building a plant in northern Texas, and let's say it, and I don't know what kind of contamination it's going to lead to, but let's say it was significant. There are so many places that would say, bring it here, white, black, Latino, whatever, that said, we need the jobs. And if that means a little bit of pollution, because Flint, Michigan, last time I checked, still has shitty water.
They do.
So I don't know. What is that Trump's fault? Is it Obama's fault? This has been going on forever in Flint, right? This originally came up early in the Obama term, if I remember right.
I mean, but you see
and
that.
So,
yeah.
You see it everywhere. And again, this is not a right or left issue as far as that goes. To me, it's a funding issue. Well, we've let New York City's fallen apart. The sewer systems and everything, it's falling apart. We can't, as a government, do things because when you go in and you say, hey, we need to repave and expand this 5 miles of road, and they go in and they bid it, a lot of times there's the nepotism, there's low bids, there's all that stuff. And then they go in and they say, okay, well, for this 5 miles of road, which equivalently 50 years ago would have been done in a matter of 3-4 weeks and at a cost of, in today's dollars, $1 million maybe.
Yep.
But now that same project is going to take 10 to 12 months or longer, and it's going to cost 10 to 20 million dollars because you have to do all the environmental impacts and you have to do this and you have to, all the red tape. So you say, well, we don't want any of the the roll back some of these. To me, that's the type of red tape that needs to be rolled back. You look at what happened in Obama's term when the retention pond in Colorado got broken and it went through and all that toxic waste went down. Do you remember who got charged for that?
No.
Nobody got charged for that. It doesn't happen. And it's ridiculous because, again, it's like bringing people in front of Congress who lie in these committees, flat out lie in committee, and then they're shown to be liars, whether it's right in the moment or later on, and it's clear that they've lied. And not once that I can recall has that committee said, you know what, we're going to find you in contempt, and we are going to recommend that you be charged with lying to Congress. Okay, so the federal government is worthless. It's toothless. Decentralized executive branch. That one cracks me up.
Yeah, that's
the president is going to go in and get rid of administrators that aren't loyal to him. Well, isn't that the point? Like, he's the head of the administrative. You're not strengthening him. That's his job. That's what he's supposed to do. Like, we're going to let police go in and do whatever they do. We're going to let the police chief be in charge of the police. Well, yeah, that's the point. He's supposed to be in charge of the police.
Yeah.
SCOTUS protections we talked about. Okay, this is one I wanted to talk about from the video. He's going to roll things back, right? Okay. The things that are going to get rolled back are the things that have been passed by executive order. How about this? How about Congress does their frickin' jobs and passes laws? It's not easy to repeal laws. It is very easy to repeal executive orders. You know who gets to repeal executive orders? The next executive. So if you can't pass a law and you're doing stuff by executive order, you're not doing it the right way. I think executive orders, I wish the Supreme Court would come out and rule. Before Trump gets in, after Trump's getting in, I don't care. Rule that executive orders are unconstitutional. And if you can't pass this by Congress, and here's the thing, you can say, well, that is deadlock stuff and stuff wouldn't get done. I point to Bill Clinton, 1994. The first 2 years of Bill Clinton's presidency, where he had a Democrat-led Congress in both houses, was an utter disaster. He was well on his way to Carter 2.0. And you know what happened? The Contract with America and Newt Gingrich. The Republicans came in, and what did you suddenly have? A split government. So then, over the next 6 years, only the good ideas got through. And suddenly, Bill Clinton looked like a good administrator. Cool. But right now, and this is one of your arguments, I'm sure, and I see it as well. We talk about all these firebrands. There's everybody's far right or everybody's far left. Not really. I still think the vast majority of congressmen and the vast majority of senators are a little bit closer to the middle than we would think. And the problem is, well, here's the problem though with that is the press doesn't want to let anybody be a moderate, because then you get the squeaky wheel on the far right and you get the squeaky wheel on the far left. So then you get guys like Manchin and the group of 8 guys that do this stuff, and they kind of get the stuff done. Cool. So you need people to actually have the intestinal fortitude to get that stuff done. Do I expect Ted Cruz to be part of a group of 8? No, but I don't expect, AOC and her group to be either.
Yeah.
So, okay, so that's on us as the voters. Christian right versus LGBTQ. Okay. I personally think that in this case, the LGBTQ rights is a misnomer. These are all social things, and saying we need some more traditional values. I'm okay with that because I think I've used the analogy before that America is the stagecoach and the traditional liberals are the horses that are just, they want to go, they want to run. And the conservatives are the guys up on holding the reins saying, hey, slow down. We've got the brakes, slow down. Because if you let us go, we're going to go right off the cliff. Well, that's what's happened with the LGBT community. They have been allowed to run wild horses. And it has hurt, I think, the very fabric of America. Okay? Because things like, we've talked about this before, hate speech. Hate speech? What the hell? What is the First Amendment there or not? Now, speech without consequences is not freedom of speech. Very different, right? Yep. So one of the things you said, who came after your community? The Christian nationalists, correct? Well, let's look at who were the Christian nationalists? Which party were the Christian nationalists, aka the Ku Klux Klan? Which party was that, KJ?
The Southerners.
Which party?
They both. There was no party. The Democrats. There was no party.
The vast majorities.
No, and I'll tell you why. Because that is a fallacy. Because if that was the case, when the party switched, then the segregation would have stopped. But it didn't. So
there's an argument.
We'll say okay. We'll say, for argument's sake, we'll say okay. Well, it was the Democratic Party. Okay, cool. It was the Democratic Party. Well, Republicans were in charge after Reconstruction in the 1860s.
Mm-hmm.
That was the initiation of the Ku Klux Klan, right? In 1860s.
Oh, hold on. That's incorrect historically. Hold on.
Talk to me.
Incorrect. Because after the Civil War, the Reconstructionists were actually the Republicans in Congress that were pushing funding to rebuild the South. The Southern Redeemers is what they were called. The Redeemers were those in the South, those white politicians, those white Democrats who said, no, we want our status quo. We're still at the top. The Redeemers came in and they said, we are not going to allow these uppity black people, and that's not how they would have said it, to come in and take charge.
A little more colorful in their time.
Right. And so what ultimately happened is what were called at the time radical Republicans who were trying to rebuild the South, who didn't want these Southern Democrats who were going to come in. They were the ones who said there has to be. Lincoln said, to get back into the Union, I only need 10% of people to come in and vow that they are union, they are behind the Union, right? Radical Republicans said, no, 50%. Why? Because no state would have hit 50% without the blacks coming in and also adding to it. So what the radical Republicans were doing was saying, look, you want to come back in, you have to include the black community. Okay. So very, very different between the radical Republicans who were actually on the side. They were the abolitionists. They were on the side of the black. Okay. So little history there, the Redeemers versus, Reconstructions, but Dems overreached. Okay, I just said if the Dems have been overreaching, and I think especially socially they have, then a little bit of Republican overreach. Hey, that's the pendulum swinging back the other way. Do I agree with all of it? I've already said I don't. The IVF stuff, I think that's stupid. Why would you ban IVF? Me personally, I don't. I'm pro-life, but I don't have a problem with exceptions to rape and incest and Plan B. I don't have I think more people, even conservatives, are more in my position than saying no IVF.
I agree.
No, okay. The hands-off stuff where you're saying, hey, if this stuff comes through, Trump's not going to know what's really going on, and it's the underlings are going to get done. I had to laugh at that, because if you think Joe Biden knows what's going on,
it's the same thing.
It's
the
yeah,
same.
yeah. Okay. So, and then you have the hard left versus the hard right. Unfortunately, two sides of the same coin.
Absolutely.
And I don't think that where we're at in this country, I'm not nearly, and look, KJ, we've talked about this. I have empathy for the Black community. I have a ghastness of what has happened to the Black community in this country, to the Chinese community in this country, to the Japanese community in this country, to the Native American to this. And the one thing I look at as well, though, I think it's disingenuous to say because Japanese Americans were interred during World War II, that if whomever becomes president, we're going to turn around and put people back into internment camps. And that's what's being used as the scare tactic for something like this, the 2025. Because 2025 is saying, well, if Trump becomes president and this is instituted, Trump is going to round up all the brown people who are here illegally. And remember, they're making this about race. All of the brown people that are here illegally from south of the border, and they are going to be put in internment camps. And they are going to be just like Japan, and then they are going to be shipped off. It's a scare tactic.
It is.
If you say to me that somebody is here illegally and they get caught here doing something wrong, and I've said this for a long time, and this is one of the things you said, hey, look, I get concerned with police interaction. If the police interact with you, you're scared. Your first thought is not good, especially for some reasons you and I know.
Yes.
Yeah. But you've also probably had many more decent interactions. But when you have one bad one, that's going to color everything you say, right?
Yeah.
Right. So if you're going to say you're here illegally means you're going to get kicked out, okay? And like if you're here illegally and you go to work every day, you drive the speed limit, you don't do anything that puts you on the police radar, the odds are you're going to live your life. Nobody's going to bother you. There's what are we at? The estimated 20 million people here illegally? Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Are we really going to, even if let's say it's the red wave of all red waves, President Trump comes in, he gets a veto-proof majority in the Senate. They get a massive lead in the House. So Trump, they can set the agenda. They can do whatever they want. Supreme Court's not going to stop them. Okay.
Yeah.
I still look at that and I go, if you overreach even a moderate amount, you're going to have 2 years and that's it, because it's going to swing back the other way. If you want to get rid, though, of 20 million people, you're not going to be able to do it in 2 years. You're not going to be able to do it in 4 years. It would have to be a concerted effort by nearly every American, and more importantly, by those people that are here illegally. You and I've already said there is one way to do that, and it's super duper simple. The most efficient way to have people that are here illegally, whether it's on overstay visas, whether it's crossing the border from the south illegally, whether it's crossing from the north illegally, whether it's you're here and you're Scandinavian for whatever reason and you're here illegal. The easiest way to get rid of anybody in this country who is illegal is to pass a law that says any individual or corporation that hires somebody who is in this country illegally can be fined up to $10,000 per instance per day. If I hire somebody to cut my lawn, now I understand the idea of, well, are you supposed to check, validate if you pay somebody to cut your lawn? Well, that's not me. That is the whoever I hire. I hire KJ and Sons to come out. You're the one who's getting the fine, not me. So KJ and Sons, if somebody comes to you and says, hey, Mr. KJ, I want to work for you. I want to mow lawns. And you say, well, let's be stereotypical here just for a second. Jose, Juan. Okay, I'm going to very clearly say I understand that stereotypical, and purposely so. Okay, Mr. Jose, show me your documentation. And he says, well, Mr. KJ, I can't. And you say, sorry, bro, move on. Oh, but Mr. KJ, I need this. Sorry, bro, can't. You are not worth it. You're not me. You are not worth me getting fined $10,000 a day. What's going to happen to Mr. Jose? Mr. Jose eventually is going to say, I can't make it in this country. I need to go back home. And that's what I have to do. Now, people say, maybe that's heartless, whatever. I am all about, I am fine legal immigration. If you want to argue, we need to have a way for migrants to come up and move about the country and to be here for 6 months during growing season, pick strawberries all the way up to work in high tech for a certain amount of time, go out. Biometric systems, I'm all for it.
Oh,
I'm all for I'm good. I'm in the weeds. But here's the thing. This goes back to the very first thing you and I talked about, probably the very first lunch we had. And that's where two POGs came up. It's just you and I having discussions. This country, and especially the federal government, elected federal government, the people in the House of Representatives, the people in the Senate, and even the president, none of them actually want to fix any problems. Because you and I can sit here and you can say, well, I don't agree with what you just said about how we handle illegal immigration. Okay, cool. Let's talk about it. And you and I can probably come up from where I am and let's say where you are. We can probably come up with something you and I can live with that probably 95% of Americans could live with. And right now, I have zero faith in this government institution. I'm sorry. Let me rephrase. In the politicians, I have a lot of faith in the system. I don't have faith in the people in the system, that they are there to actually fix things and make things right. And that's where, as American citizens, you need to vet who you are electing. You cannot send somebody in the White House, back to the White House, that is a dementia patient. You can't. And you can say, KJ, okay, I know we only have about 7 minutes, so I want to bring this question up with you, because this goes to the argument against Trump. What do we hear all from the left? This is the end of democracy, right? So if Trump is elected, it's the end of democracy.
I've heard that.
That's what we're hearing, right? Okay. Now, I'm gonna pose this to you as an analogy. I'm calling this the game show analogy. You and I are on a TV show, a reality TV show, where the people vote. They call in and they vote. And what is at stake is you as a dad are putting up your kids. You are being forced to put up your kids. If you get voted off, you lose your kids, period. They will be taken out back and literally killed, okay? Your kids will be dead if you lose.
Okay.
Or so you are saying. You are saying to the audience, if I lose, they are going to take my kids and kill them. Not only am I going to lose my fatherly rights, my parental rights, they are going to take my kids and kill them. Now, so do not vote for Lance, because if you vote for Lance and he wins, my kids are dead. Okay. Now, you either actually believe that or you're using it as hyperbole, right?
Believe it, yeah.
Now, they come to you, the producers come to you, and they say, KJ, we've kind of done some of our own polling. And right now, what we're looking at, you're going to get you're at like a 35% of people that are going to vote for you to keep your parental rights. Right now, there's about 45% that O'Neill's going to win. And if he wins, you're losing your kids, okay? But he will still raise your kids and take care of them. But you know, you're going to have to give your rights. Or, so here's the deal. We don't want you to feel like you just have no choices. So what we will do is, if you're willing to, we will actually let you pick one of your close friends. We have your list. We have your phone a friend list, right? We have your 3 or 4 friends. And we will allow you to graciously exit the game and bring in this other person. Now, we can't guarantee the other person's going to win, but you're right now, you don't have the chances. And let me ask you this. As a father, if you truly believe that death lies for your kids, are you staying in that house, or are you cutting bait and giving one of your friends a chance, who the producers have already said, look, your friends, we've got a list of them, all of them are over 40%. So they might not be guaranteed to win, but better odds than you. Are you staying in that race and putting your kids' lives at risk, or are you cutting bait?
No, nobody's gonna fight like I'm fighting for my kids. So no.
But now remember though, your kids, if what you're saying is your kids are either going to be dead if you lose, or with me, who I'll raise them in a different way than you're used to. Maybe you won't like it. They'll be alive. Are you telling me you wouldn't? Now this is my point, and I have to be real clear about this. If you are honestly saying my kids will be killed, okay? Mm-hmm. Now we're going to change it just a little bit. If I win, I'm the one who's going to go kill them, okay? Or if I win, I'm going to take care of them, just in a way you don't like. If you truly believed that the only way to keep your kids alive was for you to cut baits, that's really the only chance, I think it's pretty clear you would say, absolutely, yeah, give somebody else.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. This is my problem with what's going on right now in this election cycle, and this entire thing with this is a vote for democracy. If Joe Biden truly believed that democracy was going to be done, that his kids were going to be taken out back and killed, he's out. He doesn't believe that. The Democrats don't believe that. It is him appealing, and the Democrats appealing to the audience, to the voters, saying, if we don't keep power, democracy is dead. Our children are dead. Oh, it's a load. It's such hyperbole, and it's so unfair. It is so ridiculous. You might not like what President Trump's going to do if he wins, but he's not ending democracy. He's not. He's not. He will raise the country in a way that the Democrats this project 2025. He's going to come in and pin that up to the refrigerator and say, boys and girls,
look, man.
Hey, Raptors,
here's
the list.
Here's the thing. If I get AIDS from a blood transfusion, right, and I die from a common cold, the guy who gave me AIDS didn't kill me, but I died from AIDS nonetheless. That makes sense?
Okay. No. In this argument, no. Explain that one to me.
So we can say, okay, well, Trump's not going to kill democracy, right? Trump's not going to kill democracy. No, Trump's not going to kill democracy. I don't believe he'll kill democracy. I do believe if Project 2025 is implemented in the way that they want to implement it, that will be the shot of AIDS into the veins of America. So no, Trump won't be the guy that kills 20. No. Trump won't be the guy that kills America. But those conservative and Christian national policies is the shot of AIDS that will allow the degradation of the immune system of the American body to die.
Okay.
So yeah, I'm with you. Trump won't kill America, but yeah, he will definitely give it AIDS.
If Project 2025 was fully implemented and had no pushback and no changes, and they were able to push every single policy through, fine. The problem is they can't. That's why that's where the AIDS test comes in. And they're going to say
that's where there's two Americas, because I, as a black man, cannot afford to give the government the benefit of the doubt to allow it, right? I can't. If you say, okay, hey, yeah, this is a horrible bill if all of it gets passed, right? But what are the chances of that? I have to look back at history, right? I have to look back at I got a 52 card deck, right? We're playing poker, right? You say, hey, man, I got a really good hand. There's a pretty good probability that the house has a better hand, right? Do I keep playing or do I fold it? You know what I'm saying? You can't.
Yeah. But this is another part. But this is something you and I have also talked about again. I think that there's also part of me kind of feels bad saying this in a way emotionally. Emotionally, I kind of feel bad saying this. Intellectually, I don't feel so bad saying this. We get so stuck in the past of what's happened, right? That we ignore. If you brought Dr. King, Martin Luther King Jr., today, you were able to resurrect him in everything, and oh, you know what? It turned out, holy cow, government conspiracy. Martin Luther King didn't actually die. They put him in a cryogenic chamber. He's alive. And they are unfreezing him. They were able to repair the damage, and we're waking him up today. You like this setup? He wakes up and he finds out what's going on. He would go, what are you guys all complaining about? Holy shit, look where we are from 60 years ago.
You have a vastly wrong opinion of Martin. I will give you pre Birmingham Martin will probably feel that way. Post Birmingham Martin and 1966, 1968 Martin will have a totally different view. I assure you. Martin of 66 and 68 was more in line with brother El Shabazz of his later years. So the view of Martin that you
well, Malcolm had gone the other way though.
He didn't. He did, but it was still the same thing. It was still community empowerment, right?
So looking back between 1968 and what was going on in 1968 and the laws and the residue of Jim Crow and the pushback and the Vietnam War and all that stuff, everything that was going on, and the instability and the true discrimination, like the legitimate no shit discrimination that was still easily I don't want to say passed, but it was practiced. That's the word I'm looking for. Readily practiced. Today, and you'll agree with this, because you'll say, well, it's just as bad today, but they're more sneaky about it. The people in power, the white people, are more sneaky about it. Well, the fact that they even have to be more sneaky about it tells you change, right? But I don't think that where we are as a country in 2024, if you look back 60 years and you say 2024, 60 years ago to 1964, and then you go back and say 1904-ish, let's go this century, back to the 60s, back to the 04. The leap between the aughts, the 19-aughts to 1960 was not that big of a jump. Technology jumped, yeah. Some of the voting, some of the stuff changed, sure. Segregation was still enacted. People were still fighting against the desegregation of the schools in the South. Wallace was pulling out the Birmingham fire hoses and all that. Compared to today, where were the fire hoses in Minneapolis a couple years ago?
No.
Where were the? I don't emotionally, I can understand
Right.
the generational trauma.
Right.
Got it. But I don't think
You're framing
the generational. Say again.
The frame of the picture wrong. That's like trying to read the Constitution in a coloring book and not understanding why you're not getting all the principles of it, right? So it's different, right? Here's a revelation that Martin found later in life, which aligned him more with Malcolm, that a lot of people, tend to look over, right? He realized that it wasn't a social issue that needed to be overcame, right? It was an economic issue that needed to be overcome. He said the difference, one of the last interviews he did, he said the difference in communities between the Jewish community and the affluent Asian community and the Black community is the Jews are everybody's still discriminated against. The only difference is that Black people are not allowed to economically thrive. And every time the Black community was allowed to be on their own and gain economic prosperity, other forces will come in and stomp that out. So what Martin found out later in life was it had nothing to do with social equality, because no matter what you do, you're always gonna have a certain amount of people hate you, right? But
sure.
what the great equalizer was, and that's what led to that quote. It was the same interview that led to that quote. I fear I've led my people into a burning house, because he realized far too late that the issue wasn't social, the issue was economic power, right? He who holds the gold makes the rules. So
absolutely,
I don't care if you like me, but see, that's where the Jewish community realized, and then that's where the Asian community was allowed to prosper. But the African American community, even to this day, so now in 2024, you say, oh, well, you have economic opportunities. Sure, we do, but we're talking about what, 60, 70 years, right? We can go back 30 years and say, okay, well, the pendulum started in 1990, right? We can say in 1990. The economic veil came off for 75% of the other community. We say Black people have been able to be economically prominent for 75 for the last 30
years. Yeah.
The country. Yeah.
Right.
The country. You start that's running a 400-meter race, right? And you not getting to start until everybody's completed 300 meters. And then you ask the question, damn, why haven't they caught up? Or why are they so far behind?
Right, and we've talked about this, and I've agreed with that. It's the same. It's the same reason why America, to me, the most damaging day in the history of America was the shot at Ford's Theater to the back of President Lincoln's head.
Absolutely,
because that Great Britain, England outlawed slavery in 1810s. We were getting there in 1860s, and by President Lincoln getting killed, that legitimately delayed all those things probably by another 40 or 50 years.
Yep.
Okay. So I am with you.
Yep.
But even what you said, but again, if you say, okay, the economic handcuffs only came off in the 90s and you're still behind in the race as a community, I agree. I got it. And I agree. But I still think that somebody like Dr. King would come up and go, well, hey, at least we've had the last 30 years to get ahead. Now, that doesn't mean that you're in the same place. To me, if anything, here's the funny thing. You and I have talked about this as well. I don't think we've done it on the podcast, but it validates that Booker T. Washington won the W.E.B. Du Bois argument.
Absolutely.
So Booker T.
Yeah, we never talked about it on the podcast, but yeah, Booker T was absolutely right, and that was the and you see a lot of that, and that kind of circles back, not to circle back, but that's why. So America has an illegal problem, right? And not in the sense of we have too many illegals, because America, since its inception, has prospered from illegal labor. That's just how we make our dollars, right? If we were to say, okay, hey, we're getting rid of all the illegals immediately, you will have a financial crisis in the agriculture industry that you cannot recover from. You will have a financial, go ahead.
Depends on how you do it.
Logistically.
Because again, now first, that argument it's not racist, it's stereotyped. Because you're telling me that 17 million illegal immigrants, let's say all of them are from South America, but I think it's probably a good percentage. Is it fair to say 90%?
I don't know, man. I'd probably go by 80. Give a lot of
80. Okay, 80 works for me.
Yeah, that
okay, 80% of the 17 million. That makes it 3.4 million would not be. That makes it 13. So you're telling me 13.6 million illegal immigrants from South America, Mexico, anything south of the border, are only working in agriculture, which first of all, there's no way. Okay.
No. I will tell you I will give you 13.3 million are working in the service sector or the service industry.
Now that I agree. Right. Now I don't think it's agriculture, but service. Yes, you're right. It's cleaning floors. It's changing the linens in hotels. It is washing dishes. It is a large number of illegals are in the service industry, in agriculture, I don't want to say black jobs, but I laugh because somebody asked me, what are black jobs from the last debate?
But I mean, traditionally, service industry jobs.
Okay.
You're not being racist by telling the truth.
Okay, good. I'm glad you said that because here's my argument for that. If you remove that 13-ish million, right? And now you have all these service industry jobs, and you say, well, we're going to have this massive crash because you're not going to be able to fill those jobs. I don't agree. Here's why. Instead of pick a service job that is kind of one of those jobs that probably be hard to fill because it's menial labor. Give me one.
Indoor, outdoor. We talking basic.
Doesn't matter.
Field. Let's do field hands.
Field hand. Okay, picking strawberries.
Sure. Yep.
Okay, picking strawberries. So, Strawberry Inc., who runs a bunch of the strawberry farms down in California, suddenly loses 5,000 migrant workers off their farms. And those migrant workers, if they are allowed to stay by using the biometric, like I said, they are legally here during the migration, during the harvesting season. They can come up and they can work and whatever. And what that also does is now you say they have to be paid federal minimum wage. So if they're able to go out and come back in and have a card and actually make $8 an hour instead of $6 an hour, first things first, they're going, yeah, I like that more. But let's say it's something that isn't seasonal. Okay. So if you do that, there's a way to fix that. Let's say it's something service industry, dishwasher. right? And you say, all right, how do I get a dishwasher? And you say, well, I can't fill my job as dishwashers because I just lost, I have a restaurant. I need 3 full-time dishwashers, and I just lost all 3 of my guys because they were all here illegal and they just got deported. And gosh, I only had to pay them, like I was able to pay them $6 an hour in cash under the table. So for me to hire somebody else, who am I going to hire? There's a couple things that are going to happen. One, they're going to go for the same type of person at the minimum wage, the lowest wage they can do.
Yep.
Who's going to be hired to be dishwashers? 15 and 6-year-old kids that have no skills, that don't know how to work, and they're going to go in. One of the very first jobs I ever had was as a dishwasher. I rode my bike 33rd South up Highland Drive on part of the freeway to get to my job. Okay? I did that for like 3-4 months before I was able to go and get a job closer to home, and I didn't have to ride my bike there. Okay? So I was getting paid nothing. I was getting paid minimum wage.
Yep.
If you can't find that, do you have the other people who are here legally but socioeconomically challenged, whether it's Latino, whether it's white, whether it's black, whoever, right? And you say, well, hey, I can only hire 2 because I have this one black guy who come in, he'll do it. I have one teenager, he'll do it. I can't hire anybody else. Nobody else will come in and do this for $8.25 an hour. Well, you know what? They're going to have to pay more. They're going to have to pay $8.75 an hour, or $9.25 an hour, or $10. It's going to go up, and what that's going to do is it's going to help the unskilled black guy, the white felon, the teenager, the person who just, I'm down on my luck. I haven't been able to find any other jobs. It will be made up. And if you say, well, that's going to cost more now to go in and eat at that restaurant, well, so be it. But you're not talking, the idea that is going to devastate the economy, I don't buy it, because you're also going to take the other side, the drain of, I went in when we were getting ready to move from El Paso to San Antonio. The night before we're moving, we are literally getting ready to load the U-Haul. We are moving the next morning. We have the U-Haul backed up, garage is open. My wife and I are inside. The kids are out playing. One of the friends coming. My son, who at the time was probably, would have been about 7 or 8, comes in screaming. My youngest had the broom and was kind of hitting him, right? Well, the friend was like, dude, stop hitting us, to my 4-year-old daughter. He grabs the broom, pulls it away from her to keep her from hitting anybody. What's he do? Pops my son right in the eye.
Yep.
Rips him open. What do I have to do? Let's go, dude. Heather, my wife, do you want to take him to the hospital, or should I? It looks pretty bad. Take him to the hospital. We had to wait 3 to 4 hours because in El Paso, there were a large number of Latinos who were there with kids that had the flu. I mean, at the time, a lot of them were there because their kids had the flu. And if you don't have health care, you have to go to the ER. So there's drains like that. There was one lady that came in. This kid, Latino family, this kid was clearly not just flu sick. This kid was having problems, okay? Her English wasn't very good. I'm sitting there with my son who needs stitches on his eyes. And you know what I did? I said, you are not sitting here. Come on. I took her up to the desk and said, this woman needs to go back now. Look at this kid. This kid is turning blue. There is something wrong. This is not the flu. This is not somebody that needs to sit here because she doesn't know any better or is scared of the authorities or whatever.
Yeah.
They need to go. And I think most people would do that. I think most people are decent enough that if they notice, they would do that. Doesn't mean it's not still a drain on the system. Okay. So I think that the equilibrium in this country, you take out illegal immigrants, I think you'd still find some level of free market adjustment. I think that if Trump wins and the Heritage Foundation, because right now we're left is up here. They've gone shooting ahead, especially on social issues. And Trump comes in and the Heritage Foundation says, hey, we need to push these conservative social issues. I think you might see this. What you won't see is this. You're not going to see a situation where suddenly it's rabbit duck season on homosexuals and transgenders. You know, duck season, rabbit season. We're going to take them on. I don't believe it. Okay. Do I think that drag queen library hour gets nixed? Yes. And I hope it does. Okay. Because you can say, well, they're not hurting anybody. If you know what drag queens are, and what I mean by that is a fetish, a sexual fetish in the gay community, then you know it's not appropriate for young kids to be going to drag shows anymore. I remember living in the Bay Area when Pride Week was going and they had their Pride. I was blown away. Somebody sent me this because I was, again, more into journalism and some of those things. And somebody sent me a file of unedited photos from Pride Week in San Francisco and the Pride Parade, where little kids were. Dude, absolutely, those people should have been arrested.
So
performing live sexual acts in front of children that somehow are okay because they're named Pride Week. But
couple of things.
I think ultimately there would be more of a homostasis. I think that's the right word. Yep. A balance of what would happen in this country. I just don't think, and I understand your fear is that it would do this.
No, I
just don't see it. Okay. Yep. So that's my last thought. You get the final word.
Couple things, right? You ever take your kids to a drag show?
No, and I never would.
Right. So the parents, right, that are there with their kids, do you think they're there by force or they took them voluntarily? When they go,
I think it's child abuse.
I do. I agree. But
if you volunteer, okay, and I get the point you're making. So let me ask you: there was just somebody that was arrested here in Augusta last week, a woman who was prostituting, and it's tough to say this, who was offering to prostitute her 4-month-old daughter.
Yep.
White woman.
I agree.
White man.
I agree.
Prostitute her 4-month-old daughter. To me, not only should that child be taken away, if you're not going to death penalty those two, he needs to be castrated. She needs to be fixed. They both, and never be allowed around another child in their entire lives.
I agree, but let me finish my point. So we said, all right, if they take their kid to a drag show, that's child abuse. Mm-hmm. Where is that? I don't know which one that one is.
It's probably your wife saying, "Hey, why are you hanging up on me?"
Yeah, I'm looking, trying to find it. I hear it. God damn it.
That's Facebook. That's Facebook camera.
So, all right. So we agree that, right? So if a child takes their kid to an extremist rally, black extremist, white extremist rally, is that child abuse?
I guess it depends on what the extremist is. I think it very well could be.
If it's a black extremist, like we send it to black nationalists, or if we send them to a white extremist rally, is that child abuse?
If the things that are being taught and being expressed within those rallies directly call for violence against another person or will directly lead to some criminal act, yeah.
But the LGBTQ person reading a book in the library doesn't lead to any criminal act. They're just reading books, and the parents took them voluntarily, right?
It's grooming. It's grooming.
What I'm saying is, it's the so you there's a line, right? And it's hard to find that line between, okay, I'm going to give the parent the freedom to make the best choices for your kid, right? And to say, hey, you are parenting wrong. I need to step in and I need to govern you and how to parent your children properly.
That's the important thing, what you just said.
Yeah.
Govern.
Right.
The job of government is not to take care of its citizens.
Right.
It is to protect its citizens. Right. So if you say, we are lawmakers in South Carolina and we have seen an uptick in, let's just, the Klan movement, right? And so local, we are going to pass a state law that any parent who takes their child to participate in a Klan meeting will be subject to child abuse laws. If it's constitutional law, if it's constitutional, fine. And that's why if states, now, and this is where it goes back to states.
Yep.
This is why how abortion is. I'm fine with how the abortion laws are because it's state by state, because that's how the Constitution. So if California says, hey, drag shows are awesome, okay, I can think it's child abuse. You can think it's child abuse. Neither of us live in California.
Yep.
If Florida says no drag queens, no reading hour, it's not appropriate, we are going to pass laws that forbid this, then Florida should be able to do that too. Just like South Carolina should be able to pass laws that say Klan rallies are illegal. Now, the problem with that is, and the problem with saying you can't have these drag queen hours, is that do they run afoul of the First Amendment? And that's where the checks and balances come in. And that's why it might be slow and it might take a while, but checks and balances are still there. Can we argue that the judicial system is the slowest system in America? Probably. But that's the way it is. Personally, I think it's ridiculous, somebody being on death row for 35 years. But
we can get into that.
Yeah, that might be another one, and I might have a lot of people disagree with my solution, but or I don't know. I haven't checked. Maybe it is Heritage Foundation's 2025. It might be there already.
I don't know.
But ultimately, that's why I think laws at the lowest level are generally the most important. People that make the laws at the lowest level need to be changed out often, because even if you have one person who's been in an HOA for 10 years, we both know what kind of havoc that person can run, right? Yep. People need to be changed out often. But you know what? I can't really argue if I live in a community that says, if the law is pressed down to the lowest level and the county, Richmond County, says, we are allowing, and there's nothing about it, we are allowing drag queen library hour, then it's now my personal responsibility to not take my kids. And if somebody else wants to, they can. But if it's outlawed, or if there's a vote for it, I'm going to vote for it. What I'm not going to do is go to Portland and start lobbing firebombs at the federal court. I'm not going to. I mean, I honestly, I don't think there's even an equivalent for January 6th. I don't think. I think the federal courthouse in Portland was so much worse. But I think that ultimately we can only do at our own level what we're allowed to do.
Yep.
And the more freedom we have is generally best for everyone. And if you say President Trump, a President Trump 2025 agenda would lead to overall more freedom while having some unintended negative consequences, I trust that agenda to have fewer negative intentional consequences than what the Democrats do with their unintended consequences. Because you talk about historically, all I have to do is say war on poverty and I win the debate.
Fair enough. We can close it on that, good brother. It is 2 hours in. We got to go, man.
That was awesome.
Next
that was
week,
2 hours, but that was so much fun. And we had like 3 people watching.
Yeah, man. We Nova Scotia. We in Canada, man. We are moving on up, my brother. Until next week.
International.
Let's do it. I'll see you.